Make every night a wonderful journey, no matter where you are. Good night, sweet dreams. The first story, the journal. It was a normal day for me. I sat at the computer zoning out, waiting for the bell to ring. It was a standard day, in every sense of the word. Well, for a while, at least, my social studies assignment stared at me blankly. On the bright computer screen, I could feel school sucking my spirit dry. Not that today was a particularly bad day, that was sapping me of all my mental momentum to get through this day. It was just the opposite, in fact. It was that today was like every other day of school, repeating over and over again. The rest of this day had better survive, or something amazing had better happen. I thought to myself. The bell rang, and I shut off my computer, grabbed my planner, and proceeded to walk out of the computer lab. I tripped over some computer cords, or something, and the planner fell open to today. What was written for September 12th, 2011 was grab your backpack. I turned around to see my backpack laying underneath the computer I had inhabited for this class period. This gave me serious chills. I slowly went to grab my backpack, then carried with me on my way. I saw a tall man sitting in the library reading a book. I couldn't tell what the book was, but it didn't concern me. The man was well dressed, wearing a pressed suit and a bowler hat. He was bald, or at least, I was pretty sure. His icy, cold stare, gazing intensely into the book with his dead black eyes, gave me an unsettling feeling that made me pick up the pace to English. I quickly forgot about the creeper staring daggers, which is what he would be named in my mind forever, and began thinking of the journal. I never used it. Was it me who wrote in there? I quickly dismissed it in my mind, telling myself it's a one-time coincidence. I said that I'd get freaked out if it happened again. Well, it happened again, but this time I wasn't freaked out. This sounds strange, that my journal that tells the future doesn't scare me. But it just didn't. This time on September 13th, 2011, it said, catch Jenna. Jenna was this girl in my social studies class. She was a goddess that descended down from Earth to fuck with the guys of this plane. She most likely was the goddess of beauty in a past life, or maybe the goddess of sex. This was a pretty cryptic message, so I just decided to stay near her without looking like another one of her obsessed man-slaves. Maybe nothing was gonna happen. I got to the stairwell and saw the creeper staring daggers. His head was turned up towards me, as though he had been standing there waiting for me. He was wearing the very same bowler, and Sui, that shot me a little smile, nodded to me, then walked away. I turned to Jenna at the very moment that she tripped down the stairs. I immediately leapt to catch her, my arm wrapped around, and met her beautiful stare with one of my own. Wow, thanks. That would have sucked if you weren't there, she said to me. No problem, I said as I let her go. At that point, I was no longer afraid of whatever was happening to me. I was way too unstoppable for fear to get me. I was a demigod. Weeks passed and I used my journal for all sorts of things. I could always get the last laugh, and when someone insults me, hit 100 on tests, win immense amounts of money on bets, and plenty more. The weird thing was that whenever something foretold in the journal was about to happen, the creeper staring daggers would appear somewhere. Sometimes there's even more than one. They never speak. They just sit there. One day, I saw one on a bench. I decided to speak to it. It's me, Philip. But you already knew that, didn't you? I said with a slight nervous quiver in my voice. He smiled. I was just wondering, what are you? You always appear when something in my journal is about to happen. I ponder my own existence, he said in a deep, stern, stoic voice. Hurry on to your next class, boy, as though I didn't just tell him my name. I got up and left to my next class, thoroughly disappointed in the answer I got. October 6th, 2011. I love Saturdays. I rolled out of bed, called my friend in before I began walking to his house. I checked the journal. Reach, it said. What the hell does that mean? I got an answer as soon as I saw 5 of the creepers, staring daggers, huddled around a gutter. I was supposed to reach in, as gross as it sounds. I bent over, stuck my hand in, and started worming my hand around until I grabbed something. I couldn't tell what it was just touching, so I lifted it up. It was a gun, a 6-shot pistol. It scarred me like all hell, but some higher powers wanted me to have it. I slipped it in my pocket and ran to my friend's house. I didn't utter a word to him about it. I didn't tell anyone. Soon it left my mind and I carried on with my perfect life. It was getting into the months where it was cold. DAMN cold. It became a common practice of mine to sit in the living room, wrap myself in a blanket and read my journal after everyone else went to bed. It was my own personal time to think to myself. I believe it was a Friday when I saw something in my journal that shocked me. It said in thick, red letters, "Kill your grandfather." I immediately flipped the page as though I never saw it. The next page was filled with remarks such as, "It's his time. Waste the old bastard. Don't toy with fate. Kill the fucker." Page after page of these terrible comments. I turned around to see a group of the creepers staring daggers in my own house. How could you ask this of me? I cried out to them. He took the responsibility to be fate's right-hand man. That means doing our dirty work every now and then. You must know this, one of them said. You can't possibly ask me to kill my own flesh and blood and expect me to do it. Either you do or you'll be punished. They all disappeared. I sat in that chair, sobbing until I slowly drifted to the realm of unconsciousness. When I woke up, my father told me some really bad news. He told me that tonight we were having steak dinner with my grandfather. I dreaded all day going to that dinner when I went there. There wasn't a single normal person there. They were all creepers, staring daggers. They all had this furious look on their face towards me. They all whispered to me, "Kill him, waste the bastard," all night, but no one else could hear it. Little by little, they disappeared, being replaced by the actual owners of this restaurant. The whispering slowly stopped and I had thought it was over. That is until I turned around and saw one last of them. This one didn't look anything like the rays that was about 7'5" and appeared to be primarily one mass of bulging muscle. He was a Eurasian beast with a furious look in his eyes. He glared at me and said, "He'll die, you. I'll regret everything." He then leapt past me onto the table, grabbed my steak knife, and stabbed my grandfather in the throat. Everyone panicked. He didn't stop there. He murdered everyone in sight with incredible skill. I stood there screaming, but I had no effect on his brutal actions. He pulled a gun and shot more people down. He looked at me and began yelling, "I told you that you'd regret it," over and over. I blacked out and woke up in the exact same pose he was in the exact same spot he was in, with a bloody steak knife in one hand and a smoking 6-shot pistol in the other. The second story, the perfect video game. I heard rumors about a video game console, released in the early 90s, that promised the most immersive games imaginable. It bore a strong resemblance to the Super Nintendo, except it had no cartridge slot, no reset button, and only one controller port. It was released in an extremely low quantity. It's possible that less than 50 were ever available. People I talked to who remembered it from their childhood only mentioned the first game in the list. Other games were included on the console, but this one was, they say, the perfect game, lifelike graphics and sound, even by today's standards. An endless supply of new, fun content, solid gameplay. The controls were responsive to the point of recognition, they recall, and the single controller port was all that was necessary. The NPCs in the game were smart enough to be just as entertaining as real players. It was quite literally a game nobody wanted to stop playing, and the people I interviewed all remarked, somewhat bitterly, that their parents forcibly dragged them away from the television set after a few days of continuous playing and threw the console in the trash. I was intrigued by what I knew so far, so I went looking for more people who remembered this relic of gaming history. I searched high and low for anybody besides the handful of people I had already talked to, and after a month of painstaking investigation, I found 2 independent accounts. They had a much harder time remembering the specifics of the console, but I was able to jog their memory by repeating what I had in my notes. I could see their eyes light up a little, remembering the perfect game, but both of them said, that's not all that the game could do. Both of them said the interface was complete, and I inquired what exactly they meant after a few days. Apparently, the game started having a positive physiological effect. It was as if the actions done in-game were giving the player exercise, and the player was able to go without food and water, seemingly drawing sustenance through items collected in the levels. However, after a couple of days they had played this game continuously for a week. By this point, they started feeling the damage done to their in-game player character. The pain was small at first, and only a slightly forceful reminder to be more attentive. After a short while, though, the pain started getting intense, and the weariness of the constant action was taking its toll on them. The game was still perfect. It was better than any high you can imagine, one of them said, but it was becoming physically exhausting to play, and they couldn't tear themselves away from it. I was almost done with one level, and I was fighting a boss that used to whip. The other interviewee said, I remember the whip was a one-hit kill. I had to start the level over, but I remember the searing pain where it lashed me across my arm. He then unbuttoned the sleeve on his shirt, and I could see a scar twisting around his arm. Yeah, it was getting that bad. Both of them said their parents returned to the house 9 days into the marathon game session, and forcibly dragged them away from the console and took them to the emergency room. The console was gone when they got back home, thrown away like all the others. I bet. I could not find any other people who even knew what I was talking about. The rumors had stopped there, and I was left with incomplete knowledge about where I could even find one of these consoles. A sense of dread settled in the back of my mind, though, and I felt it was necessary to pore through newspaper archives from that period. I was trying all sorts of variations on bootleg console in an online database search, and what I finally stumbled upon was shocking. There were 15 separate incidents of people found dead in their homes, sitting in front of their TVs with a bootleg-looking console hooked up to it. They had a butchered appearance, most commonly, with some found in pieces, and autopsies revealed that the internal organs had dissolved. One article remarked that the TV was just displaying static, and they could not get the console to power on. Local officials tried contacting the manufacturer of the console, but the owner's manual and the information on a sticker on the back of the console both referenced an address that led to the site of a warehouse demolished over 80 years ago, the third-story level. It is said that music has the ability to change an individual's behavior and emotion. Music can truly have profound psychological effects on humans. Music can change. It can affect you positively and negatively. It was a peaceful autumn day when my mother gave me the violin. I had always wanted a violin. It was such a beautiful antique instrument. The chin rest of the violin was black. There was a dark red stain on the bridge of the violin. I truly didn't mind the stain at all. I was also given an extra set of strings, a soft cloth, and rosin. I thanked my mother for the beautiful and wondrous gift she gave me. I then went back into my room with my gift. On that night, I started having nightmares. The nightmares were incredibly vivid. Every night I wake up with the emotions of fear and sadness in my mind. I started having hallucinations. As well, every day I see a boy with no heart. He physically has no heart. There was a bloody wound on the left side of his chest. His skin was white as snow, and his hair was black as the feathers of a raven. His eyes were replaced with darkness. I see him every night as well. Every night he would just stand there next to my bed with an emotional expression on his face. I believe that I am just hallucinating, am I? Am I just hallucinating? Am I mad? The next day, I began to play on my violin. It wouldn't make any sound though odd. I used the rosin for my bow, yet there was still no sound coming from the instrument. The room was silent for about 10 seconds, then I heard music. The music was coming from the violin. I was not playing the instrument at all. It just played by itself. The music sounded like the moonlights and not played in reverse. I immediately dropped the instrument. I was truly frightened. The darkness then began to consume the room. The music was growing louder. My ears started bleeding. I saw the boy right next to me. He slowly twisted his head. His emotions, his expression turned into a grim-looking smile. He said nothing. All I could hear was the distorted music. I felt something cold on my shoulder. I didn't want to look, so I closed my eyes. Then I woke up. The violin was right next to me on my bed. At that time, I never wanted to see that violin again. I began to set up a bonfire in my backyard. I tossed the violin into the fire, hoping it will be the last time I will ever see that instrument. The next day, I got up to get myself some breakfast. I felt relieved. I then went back into my room with my breakfast. It was there. The violin level was there as well. He was standing right next to the violin with that same emotional as expression on his face. "You have to try harder on getting rid of me," he said with a quiet voice. I named him Lovell because I found the name carved on the upper part of the violin. My room started to get cold. There were dark red stains on the walls of my room. I dropped my breakfast and ran out of my room. I could still hear it, the moonlights, and now it played in reverse. I thought I was about to die or wake up, but nothing happened. The music kept on playing. I wasn't exactly sure if this was all real. I was just going mad. I just wanted it to stop. It did. I couldn't hear the music anymore. I went back into my room. Loveland. The dark red stains were gone, but not the violin. How was I supposed to get rid of it? I thought of many ways on how to get rid of the violin, yet only one solution came up. I had no choice but to give the violin to someone else. Lovell appeared again. I believe he knew what I was up to. He grinned at me. I didn't know what to do. I took the violin, then left the house. Fortunately for me, I sold the violin. Unfortunately, it is still out there. Lovell is still out there. That cursed violin is still out there. Music can change you. It truly has changed me.